Welcome to the Country Watch Political Intelligence Briefing Quick Hits, a weekly briefing of hot stories across the world in brief. I'm Denise Youngblood Coleman, the Chief Editorial Officer and Senior International Affairs Analyst at Country Watch. This week, the focus is on the United States as the House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol convenes public hearings. The inaugural hearing brought back viewers to the fateful events of that day, focusing not only on the disturbing imagery of the violent attack on the center of United States legislative power, but also juxtaposing it with videotaped testimony from the inner circle of the Trump administration. Included in that cadre of insiders were former Attorney General Bill Barr, the former president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, former campaign advisor Jason Miller, and Alex Cannon, a lawyer for Trump. Together, their testimony made clear that not only was there no evidence of widespread election fraud or that the election was stolen, and that Joe Biden freely and fairly won the 2020 presidential contest, but these facts were known within the Trump White House. Yet despite that knowledge, Donald Trump continued to peddle what has come to be known as the big lie, that the election was stolen. Republican Representative Liz Cheney, however, wasted few words in excoriating her fellow Republican colleagues on the matter, declaring, and I quote, "Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your honor will remain," unquote. Perhaps one of the most stunning revelations from the inaugural hearing of the January 6, 2021 committee was former President Trump's reaction to the insurrectionists at the Capitol chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Trump's response was not to show concern for the life of his vice president. Instead, Trump reportedly said, and I quote, "Maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence deserves it," unquote. The second round of the January 6, 2021 Select Committee hearings was convened on January 13, 2022. In that session, the committee members laid out further evidence showing that Donald Trump knowingly misled his supporters with mendacious claims of voter fraud. Despite knowing these facts, Trump pressed forward with his efforts to amplify voter fraud conspiracies to undermine Joe Biden's victory and overturn the election result. In the second hearing, former Attorney General Bill Barr said in testimony that he had carefully examined the allegations of vote dumps in Detroit on the night of the election and concluded that there was no wrongdoing. He testified that he made this clear to Trump, his conclusion. Barr also referenced claims of more votes than voters in Philadelphia, noting that this was easily debunked by comparing primary data with general election data. Despite these conversations between Barr and Trump, the 45th President of the United States continued to peddle these debunked and fallacious claims of vote fraud with the intent of undermining the legitimate election result that gave Joe Biden victory. The country's former Deputy Attorney General, Richard Donoghue, also played a part in debunking fabricated claims regarding a suitcase of votes in Georgia. Despite Donoghue making clear this to Trump, the former president continued to peddle this conspiracy theory to his supporters. The January 6, 2022 Select Committee also highlighted recorded testimony from Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, as well as campaign aide Jason Miller, to show that Trump was well aware of the facts of the 2020 election being lost. According to videotaped testimony by Stepien and Miller, both men advised Trump not to declare victory on election night because the votes were still coming in and the outcome was indeed dubious. As was made clear by Trump's own advisors and election experts in the media, because of the different trends between mail-in voting and in-person voting, there would be a red mirage on election night due to counting in-person votes from predominantly Republicans. That was likely to shift over time as mail-in ballots from Democrats were counted. Yet rather than rely on the professional guidance of individuals like Stepien, Trump instead relied on the advice of an, and I quote, inebriated Rudy Giuliani to advance his voter fraud claims. The committee repeatedly referenced Giuliani's state, which was clearly under the influence of alcohol. According to Jason Miller, who said Giuliani was, and I quote, definitely intoxicated. Ultimately, Trump chose to ignore his professional inner circle in favor of Giuliani's advice, which very likely coincided with his own predilections, and declared victory. Trump's behavior in these regards would play into questions as to whether or not the 45th President of the United States acted corruptly. The immediate legal jeopardy could rest on obstruction of official proceedings and witness tampering, but the second session of hearings introduced a new potential violation of law. Since Trump solicited contributions from his followers on the basis of his bogus vote fraud claims, it could also lead to fundraising fraud charges down the line. The hearings would continue through June 2022. The goal, seemingly, of the House Select Committee is to paint a picture to the American people of an attempted coup in the United States. It was clear that the House Select Committee was placing the 45th President of the United States at the center of the attempted coup, effectively portraying him as the coup leader with corrupt intent. With the hearings continuing through the month of June 2022, I will dynamically update this as we go along. Moving on to other stories in the world, the war in Ukraine. United States defense officials were warning that Russia was likely to seize control of the entire Luhansk region of Ukraine within weeks. The grim warning came as Ukraine sustained heavy casualties and as its ammunition supplies were being depleted. The capture of Luhansk would still leave Russia short of its wider goals of capturing the entire Donbas region of eastern Ukraine. Still, it would signal a significant victory for Russia and establish a new front line in a war that could continue indefinitely. Moreover, it would set the path for Russia to pursue offensives in Odessa and Kharkiv down the line. The process of Russification in eastern Ukraine was already underway, with Russian passports being presented to Ukrainian citizens in the Russian-controlled city of Kherson. The distribution of Russian passports in separatist-controlled eastern Ukraine has been strategic and intended to provide the pretext to enter eastern Ukrainian territory to protect Russian citizens. For its part, Ukraine has employed the West to deliver weaponry at a faster clip. The good news for Ukraine was the European Commission said that it would recommend granting Ukraine official status as a European Union candidate country. In Israel, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett remains at risk of his fragile unity government collapsing. He has seen defections from the right wing of his coalition, indeed from his own Yamina party, and he has seen defections from the left wing Meretz party. The main sticking point in June 2022, a controversial settlement bill that would extend legal provisions to settlers living in the West Bank that has divided the coalition. The only thing these flanks could agree on was the desire not to send Israel into fresh elections and give Benjamin Netanyahu and Likud an opportunity to return to government. This is another ongoing story that I will continue to cover. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government introduced legislation that would append post-Brexit trading rules for Northern Ireland. The bill would vitiate the already signed withdrawal treaty from the EU. Under existing terms, there were checks on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from England, Scotland and Wales to prevent them from entering the EU's single market via Ireland, while also sidestepping a hard border. The new legislation would eliminate most of those checks, allowing businesses in the UK to deliver goods to Northern Ireland without having to go through an EU customs declaration process, despite the fact that the legislation would override the very treaty that the United Kingdom already signed. The Conservative government has insisted that it does not violate international law. The EU, however, has a very different reaction and has regarded it as a bad faith move and threatened legal recourse. European Commission Vice President Markus Sefcovic has made clear that the EU would renegotiate the withdrawal treaty. Furthermore, Sefcovic warned that the EU would have to consider reopening both a suspended infringement procedure case against the UK as well as opening new cases. I will continue to cover this story as it unfolds. Look out for the results of two second-round elections on June 19th. In Colombia, Gustavo Petro, the former leftist rebel and senator, and Rodolfo Hernandez Suarez, a businessman who has been compared to Donald Trump, would be competing for the presidency. Polling data at the start of June 2022 and ahead of the second round set for June 19th shows that Petro and Hernandez appear to be in a statistical tie. It should be noted that Hernandez infamously slapped a city councilman in the face. He also had to retract admiration for Adolf Hitler, claiming that he had actually meant to express admiration for Albert Einstein, and not the German Nazi of World War II. Still, despite these actions that earned him comparisons to Donald Trump, Hernandez has successfully managed to market himself as a political outsider tackling corruption, even though he was under investigation for graft allegedly committed during his mayoral term. On the other side of the equation, if Petro was to see election success, he would have to target both centrist voters repelled by Hernandez as well as young voters who were jaded and disinclined to actually show up at the polls. For Petro, his intent was to run a progressive, youth-centered campaign of the type launched by Gabriel Boric in Chile that propelled him to shocking victory in that South American country. The other election runoff to watch is the French parliamentary contest. In the first round of the parliamentary elections, voter turnout was low, and the election results estimates indicated that President Emmanuel Macron's Ensemble, etc. centrist coalition was running neck and neck with Jean-Luc Mélenchon's leftist NUP alliance. Marine Le Pen, who was defeated in the second round of the presidential contest earlier this year, was looking to increase the seats held by her far-right National Rally Party. Since France is a party to the first-past-the-post system of politics, the parliamentary landscape would really only be known after the second round of voting. Data by Ipsos indicated that Macron's centrist coalition would win the plurality of seats in the parliament, quite likely between 255 and 295 seats, but this also meant that it was at risk of failing to acquire an absolute majority of 289 seats in the 577-seat chamber. Ipsos meanwhile forecast that the leftist alliance would secure between 150 and 190 seats, in line with polling data before the elections. This type of performance would signal quite a success for the consolidated left, allowing it significant latitude in influencing the legislative agenda of France. Should Macron's Ensemble coalition fail to emerge as the biggest party in parliament, he would be forced into political cohabitation, a scenario that would sharply stymie his agenda. It should be noted that France has not been in a state of cohabitation since 1997 to 2002, when Conservative President Jacques Chirac was forced to work with Socialist Prime Minister Lionel Jospin. Other stories I'm covering as we go into the next week: pressure on former Vice President Mike Pence by Donald Trump to append the 2020 election result. This was the focus of the June 16, 2021 testimony, and we'll cover it in the next session. Also on my radar, President of Brazil, Bolsonaro, using the Trump playbook. As well, United States and South Korea warn North Korea of consequences if Pyongyang carries out another nuclear test. Subscribers can read more about these and other stories at the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. I'd also like to take this time to mention my comprehensive Afghanistan withdrawal report called Sunset in the Graveyard of Empires, which will be available for purchase from the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Thank you for your time, have a great day, and remember, now more than ever, we live in an interconnected world.